You know something, Chris? We're going to go ahead and here, and then I know a lot of the viewers of the Wrestle Talk podcast have been tuning in for this guest. Now, this individual has been around professional wrestling for a long time. I've had the opportunity to compete against him. Not necessarily compete against him, but I've been in the ring with him on several occasions in many promotions throughout the Midwest. I will tell you right now, too, a lot of people have said that this is a matchup that some people would have said would have been that dream matchup that a lot of people would have wanted to see. And to give you an idea, man's been around pro wrestling since 2007. I mean, almost 2 decades in the world of professional wrestling. So at this time, ladies and gentlemen, I'm going to go ahead and get some introduction music ready here. Bear with me just a minute. We're going to go ahead and bring in our featured guest this evening. Ladies and gentlemen, the one, the only, Jaysin Static. Let's go ahead and hit that music. Maybe.
If it's coming.
Maybe.
Maybe.
And of course, Jaysin Static right in the correct position here.
Man, I thought I was coming into a professional show.
Oh, we've been having technical gremlins all night long. It's one of those things. Jaysin, welcome to the Wrestle Talk podcast. How you doing?
Oh, yeah. Appreciate you guys. Thank you guys for letting me come on, man.
Well, Jaysin, I got to tell you right now, I mean, again, you and I are much from the same mold. I mean, again, I was looking back at your history, and again, you talk about 2007. You talk about your start in professional wrestling, and a lot of people that aren't in the St. Louis area are not familiar with the historic South Broadway Athletic Club and the training that took place for you to become a wrestler at South Broadway. For those that are watching the program here this evening, can you give a little bit about what it was like to train at South Broadway? And again, we're going to talk about some of the names that you trained with and competed against during that time. It was basically a who's who of the early 21st century.
Yeah. Well, I mean, the main trainer at that time, whenever I came in down there, the main trainer was Johnny Courageous. Good guy, good worker. You know, I don't think he's working anywhere anymore. I think he retired and everything. But like you said, there was a who's who of essentially anybody who was a worker down at MMWA at the time was coming down there training people. So on a Monday, if you were down there, and I was one of those guys that was down there every single day of the week if I could be, even if there was nobody down there training that day, I was still down there taking bumps myself. But, you know, Jimmy Harris, Billy Diamond, Brandon Espinoza, AJ Williams, like you said, there's a who's who of all of the guys who was in that pocket, in that area of Gino, their exterminator, came down a couple of times, and I got to catch stuff with him. Davey Richards used to come down there all the time. Kyle O'Reilly, Bobby Fish used to come down quite a bit. You know, so it was a who's who of essentially anybody that was in the area at that time. Jimmy Harris,
another one. Yeah, that's another one that you're looking here. I don't know where we're going to go with this one, Jaysin. I really don't with what's there. But, I mean, again, you talk about Johnny Courageous. And, again, I'm going to tell you right now, being around pro wrestling as long as I have, Johnny Courageous was one of those individuals that doesn't get as much credit as he truly deserves. I mean, he was a man that could go out there and he could wrestle. I mean, literally, he could wrestle with anybody. You wanted to put him in there in the ring with the likes of a Gino the Exterminator. You wanted to put him in the ring with guys like a Billy Diamond. You wanted to put him in the ring with guys like Shaft. And then you look at other guys like yourself, like Webmaster Stevie K. When you look at guys like Brandon Espinoza, like an Ace Hawkins, the man could go out there and wrestle anybody.
Yeah,
and he was just amazing. And again, he was one of those. I mean, dare say, as his moniker was, he was almost like truth, justice, in the American way.
Yeah, you know, and I also caught like snippets and tidbits of stuff from Tony Costa himself, because a lot of people didn't know, but I actually worked at Broadway at that time too. Like, I wasn't just a wrestler; I actually worked at the building, so I was an employee of the company of the South Broadway Athletic Club at the time. So me, after the shows, we'd clean up. I would sit there with Tony. I would hang out with Tony. I'd go over to Tony's house and all that stuff. So there was a lot of times where me and Shaft and Tony would be sitting there cleaning up the events after everybody left, and we just sit there and talk about what happened, what was going on, ideas and stuff like that. So it was a super cool environment to come up in because, I didn't just get trained by one person. I got trained by a whole litany of people, of wild and crazy characters, So I got a little bit from everybody. I got a little bit from Lightfoot. I got a little bit from, Philly Blunt, Shaft. Shaft is the guy that actually brought me in to wrestling. If it wasn't for Shaft, I wouldn't be here. So Shaft was the one that opened the door for me. He's the one that told me about Broadway. So, everything that I do is, and thanks to him, because he's the one that, gave me the opportunity when he didn't have to.
And that's one thing too, and I agree with you. Again, shout out to Shaft and the great folks at Outside the Ring as well. Again, longtime friends of the Wrestle Talk podcast. When you have wrestlers that you compete against, and now I have wrestlers you learn from. I mean, you mentioned two names. Shaft is one of those. Shaft is a man I think is going to wrestle until he's 100 years old.
Probably.
I think it's the way it's going to be. It's like the old adage. Every time we want to finally decide it's time to put the boots on the mat, put them on the mantle, call it a career, for some reason or another, we get drugged back in. Prime example is he's wrestling a man I know that you were familiar with too, a man by the name of Cayman. Yeah, and there were some issues there in the past as well. I want to go ahead here. We were looking at some of the matches that you had, and one of the things before I send this over to Chris. Is a lot of people know that you had a pretty solid rivalry with one Brandon Espinosa. I know right now he's traveling all around the Midwest. What are your thoughts about the wars you had in the ring, and professionally and personally, your views on one Brandon Espinosa?
Brandon's got a bad rap about over the years, but me, the way that I see him is he's the type of guy who really cares about what he's doing. He cares deeply about what he's doing, and he wants to be as professional as he can. And sometimes when you have a little bit of passion behind something, sometimes you get a little bit of an attitude behind you. And that happens sometimes. Everybody's had that attitude, especially in wrestling. We're essentially a business built on attitude and ego and all kinds of stuff. So sometimes that stuff does get in the way. But with all that being said, if it wouldn't have been for Brandon, I wouldn't have had a lot of the shots and chances that I was given. Me wrestling in North Carolina was because of Brandon. Me wrestling in Tennessee was because of Brandon. Me wrestling over in IWAU was because of Brandon. Me wrestling for it was an NWA 01. I think they were a part of NWA at the time back then. So if it wasn't for Brandon teaching me the ropes, I wouldn't have done a lot of the stuff that I did, because I'm one of those guys, and I tell my guys all the time, like, I did a lot of stuff wrong, and I didn't push myself as far as I feel that I could have went if I really pushed myself. Brandon was the guy that sat there and pushed me, knowing that I could do it, but me not having enough confidence in myself to actually go out and do it on my own. So if it wouldn't have been, I know this now, I wish I would have known this back then, but Brandon was the guy who was literally kind of like, Jaysin, come on, get going. Come on, Jaysin, get going. You can do this. Take this shit serious. Go ahead, man. Because I had a bunch of options. I had a bunch of opportunities, like wild and crazy opportunities starting out in my career. Like my third professional wrestling match that I ever had was with Tracy Smothers.
Mm-hmm.
For Juggalo Championship Wrestling. And I got that on a whim because I knew a guy. I went there to the show because he was like, hey, they're doing a show over here. Do you want to come over and hang out? I was like, yeah. And then he introduced me to Scott D'Amore, who was actually running their book at the time.
Mm-hmm. And you talk about Scott D'Amore. It's really a kind of a full circle thing. You saw earlier on in the program, we were talking about his departure I guess would be the best way to put it in TNA. I got to ask you, I mean, he's had a very storied career. I mean, you look at Team Canada, you look at Border City Wrestling, you look at the countless different promotions he's been in. What are your thoughts about Scott D'Amore and his departure from TNA?
Well, I mean, with as much as moving parts as they've had going on over the last like 6 months or so, like to me, like for Anthem to get rid of him for essentially nothing because nobody's said anything yet so far about it on the reasons of why he was terminated. You know, to me, I see that as detrimental because one thing that you got to do, like the gentleman that was on here a while ago, he said to be a good leader, you have to be a good servant at first. You know, so Scott D'Amore was always a good, you know, he was always a TNA guy. Did good by TNA, and then he built up his reputation, and he finally got up into the spot that he was in to where he could actually pull some strings and do some stuff. And he literally turned TNA all the way around to the point of where, you know, they were, you know, having talks with WWE, you know, behind the scenes, doing stuff with Mickie James in the Rumble last year. I think that was Mickie James in the Rumble last year. You know, help bringing over Nick Aldis and everything like that, you know, like all of that came between all of that area, you know, so like to me, I don't know what Anthem is doing, you know, and I'm kind of one of those guys like nowadays, like I don't want to really talk crap on a bunch of people because I kind of want to build things up and build people up and not talk crap because that's what got me in so much trouble years ago, you know, so I want to build people up, but I think they really dropped the proverbial ball on this one because unless something comes out like, you know, he did some wild stuff, you know, I don't know. Like, to me, it's a ball drop because, you know, like Moose is one of their top guys. Moose literally said in an interview about a week ago, a week or two before the firing, that the only reason he didn't sign with WWE over TNA was because of Scott D'Amore. Because of the relationship that he formed with Scott D'Amore. So, and that's another big part about being able to you got to be able to form relationships with people. So, like, we got to tamp down that ego and we got to tamp down that, you know, attitude and realize that we don't know everything about everything. We think we do, but we don't. You know, and sometimes you just got to be able to, you know, listen to what people say instead of, you know, sticking your foot in your mouth all the time.
And you know, Jaysin, that's one thing as young wrestlers, and I thank you for bringing it forward because I myself very early in my career did the exact same thing. It's one of those, you think you know everything at 19, 20, 21 years old, you're getting into the wrestling industry. And one of the things I always tell people, I know you're the same way with your training school and all the wrestlers that you brought forward into the world of professional wrestling, is the best way to go about it is sit down, keep your mouth shut, keep your ears open, and listen and take that knowledge. Because without knowledge in this industry, you're not going to go anywhere. I mean, again, you have to have athletic ability. You have to have all the conditioning and the charisma and all that, but you got to listen.
Yeah. That's something I actually, like, one of my biggest requests of the guys that I work with is like, I might, and I tell them guys this, and I'm serious about it. I may not be right about what I'm teaching you at this exact point in time. Somebody might tell you something different that works better for you. Listen, if that's the case, say like hypothetically, if I'm teaching you how to throw a clothesline, right? And that clothesline's not working out for you, and Luke Roberts tells you and it works out better for you, he's right in that point. If it works better for you, we have to get into this mindset of understanding that, you know, sometimes there's people that know more about us, and that's one of my big things. Is like I'm big about showing respect to people, and understand and letting guys know and making guys understand that this business is about knowledge. You know, so get that knowledge from whoever you can get it from. Even if it seems like it might be bad at that time, you know, like if I hear you say something and then I hear Chris say something, those two things might be different at that. You might say something one way. Chris might tell me how to do it one way, but you guys are telling me the exact same thing, but Chris's works better than what Luke's does.
Mhm.
So therefore, it's going to make me a better worker, when I'm taking information from each and every single person that I come in contact with.
And I couldn't have said it any better, Jaysin. We're here right now with Jaysin Static, longtime professional wrestling personality here in the St. Louis area. And I'm going to turn things over. I mean, this is one of those interviews I really enjoy because the idea where you, myself, and Chris Rodell, if you put the three of us together, we're looking really since about the late 1990s into the early 2000s. I mean, all three of us are kind of that same mindset. And Chris, I know there's a lot of things that you can add to this discussion as well. So I'm going to go ahead and turn things over to my broadcast colleague here, Chris Rodell.
Oh yeah, I kind of want to bring it back because you were talking about your training, and you opened up. You're also a trainer, like you said. I know several of your guys. I've met several of your people that you've trained.
Yeah.
You have Fight Club Wrestling Academy. So, what is the first thing that you tell a new trainee when they come in?
One of the first things that I try to tell people is, I ask them what they want out of pro wrestling. What is it that you want? Where do you want to go? Because to me that's big. That's a big thing for me because I want to know how I can help you get to where you want to go. It's not good enough for me to just keep guys in this St. Louis area or in this Midwest area. Okay, I got a guy named Eagle Eye. He wants to go as far as he absolutely can, meaning he wants to go to the big show. So he's going to work different. I've got to train him differently than what I have to train a guy who just wants to stay here locally. So my first thing is I ask them what they want. Do you want to be the WWE superstar? Do you want to go wrestle for New Japan? Do you want to go down to Mexico and wrestle for AAA? Do you want to go wrestle for AEW, any of these other big companies? Because that's a different level that you're playing on. So you've got to carry yourself from the very get-go. When your first match, the first time that you step into an arena or a building and you start interacting with the business itself, not just the training aspect, you've got to carry yourself in a different way than what you would if you just want to be the local guy who wrestles once a month. And that's perfectly fine if you want to be that guy that just wrestles once a month. That's another thing is there's so many different areas of wrestling. I tell the guys that there's different levels. You got your backyarders. Everybody talks crap about backyarders, but if you want to be honest, everybody started from a backyard. Everybody
that's the truth.
Everybody. So this mindset of, backyarders are, junky. No, some of the biggest names in this industry were backyard guys beforehand. So let's just drop that to begin with, and that's your first level. Your second level is your once a month guys who wrestles for a couple of the companies in the area. Then you have your third level, your guys who travel to all the different shows in a 60 to 80 mile radius. And then you have your unsigned talent who does it as a job, who wrestles all around the world. And then you have your contracted talents who are wrestling contractually for all of the big companies. Which of those levels do you want to be on? Which do you want to play on? That's the first thing that I ask these guys is, what level do you want to play on? Because then I know how I have to help you. And whether my guys make it to that level or not, at some point in time, it's on them. I can only guide them, for so long before they have to take the reins of their own career, and make those moves from what I've taught them to get to those next levels. So that's one of the first things that I ask.
And as someone's going into their first show, like let's just use we'll use Eagle Eye or Jerry Morgan. When they came to you and said, "Hey, I got my first book. I got my first booking. What do I need to do when I go into the building? As soon as I get there, what etiquette do I need? Do you teach them the locker room etiquette? I assume, right?
Well, yeah. the one thing that I tell the guys is, we use Eagle Eye as an example because he was the guy that was the first graduate. So I took him over to a PWE show and introduced him to Lenny. And this was about a month or two before he even had a match. But we went over there, we hung out, I introduced him to a couple of people because I knew that he was going to be venturing out. So we were going to a couple of the shows that were all around. We went to CHWA, we went to Lenny's, we went to a couple other places. And something I told him, the biggest thing for me, like I said a while ago, is respect. And that's not respect of anybody and everybody in the business. That's respect of the business in general, which means respect everybody, even if they're not respecting you. Because that's something that I had a problem with. I had a mouth on me back in the day, and I ran afoul of a couple of the older guys because I stepped to them and I said some shit that I probably shouldn't have, and not saying that it hurt me in any way, but it was just not a good way to do business. And to me, it's just a disrespect. It's showing a disrespect to the business, not just the person that you disrespected, but the actual business of professional wrestling. So that's my biggest thing, is showing respect to the business, because once you start disrespecting anybody and everybody, just for the hell of it, just for the giggles and everything like that, that's when like all the stuff on the outside on the back, we take the backside of the wrestling business to the outside and we start showing it to the fans, and the fans get in it, and then just becomes this toxic mindset of, let's go after this person, because that's not helping anybody. I'm big on trying to bring a little bit of respect back to the business, and that's trying to build people up, guys, every company has their good and bad things, everybody has a good show, but everybody has things on that show that's bad sometimes. Let's build those people up instead of tearing them down, being like, oh, this guy sucks. F this guy. He needs to get the hell out of the business. Well, maybe we should just slow the roll a little bit and be like, okay, this is what you did wrong. And this is why you did wrong. Maybe let me hear why you did. Like, one of the things that I do, I ask my guys, I go, the first thing that I ask them after they have a match, and I don't go to all the matches because I can't, but one thing that I ask them, the first thing I ask them is, I go, what do you feel that you did wrong in the match? What do you feel you could have done better in your match? So they start looking at themselves with an analytical eye of, oh, I did this wrong, I can do this better next time. Instead of being like, putting them over all the time, being like, oh, yeah, bro, that was a great fucking match. No, you did this wrong. This is why. Try to do it this way. Maybe see how it works. Get some information from somebody else. Ask this guy, what do you think I did good? What do you think I did wrong? I think we, as the older generation, we need to start being a little bit, something that we always say, the older guys are like, you got to respect the business. You got to respect us, blah, blah. No. But we got to show respect to those guys too, because these are the guys that's furthering the industry. So we've got to learn how to actually talk to guys more often and be like, hey, we think you might have done this wrong. Let me hear your opinion on it. What do you feel you did wrong? Type stuff. You know what I mean?
Yeah, exactly. I mean, and plus, if someone, and as you probably know, that if someone gets a reputation, the wrestling business, as much as it's like huge, it's also very small, especially when you're in the local community, like the St. Louis, this Illinois area type community is it's not small, but it's not like super huge, and everybody talks to everybody at some point. And if you end up getting a bad reputation, that's gonna kind of burn you down the road. At least that's my opinion. I don't know if Luke or Jaysin, if you have a feeling on that.
Well, I'm gonna throw one out here for Jaysin, and I think he would agree. Is the idea where when you're in the world of professional wrestling, you've got to understand that there are certain things. I always looked at it from the point of view of where, as Jaysin said, there are times when I'm going to be right. there's going to be times when I'm not even going to be remotely right. And it's one of those where when it comes down to it, it's just the idea of you take what works for you. And again, it's kind of like, I liken it to a great actor. You don't take one particular person's thought process and make it work. You learn a little bit of this, a little bit of that, and you go around. I mean, that's like a lot of the wrestlers you see today. They can do lucha libre, they can do chain wrestling, they can do the aerial offense, they can brawl with the big guys, they can do the hardcore when they need to. You got to take little pieces of everything, and if you stub your toe along the way, you may have to pay for it down the road.
Yeah. Yeah. Renee actually made a good point right now. He said, got to be humble enough to accept criticism. That's part of the younger one's struggle with it. And, honestly, Renee, I think that's a struggle that we as wrestlers and people in the wrestling bubble have in general. Like, we don't like to take criticisms of what we do because it makes us feel like we're less than. It was something I heard. I heard this. It was either yesterday or today. I don't remember exactly when I heard it. But Conan was talking about Conan and Disco was on their podcast, and they were talking about a situation with Eddie Guerrero. And they said that Eddie, anytime that Eddie had a match, he would go to somebody and ask them to watch his match to see what they said he was doing wrong or to what he could do better. That's Eddie freaking Guerrero. If Eddie Guerrero did that type of stuff, why can't we start thinking like that? I just want to do better. I want to Chris, you said something a while ago. Leave the business better than it was whenever I started.
Mm-hmm.
That's something I want to teach guys what I wasn't taught that I know now. And I want to make sure that I leave guys in a mindset of what can I do for the business? What can I bring back to the business that's not currently going on right now? How can I be different? And how far can we go with this?
Mm-hmm.
Because it's a big uphill battle.
and Luke is I talked to Luke about this several times. Is like I'm still amazed because I'm a ring announcer. I'm like, and I was a former referee as well, but wrestlers come up to me after the show or after their match and be like, so what did you think of it? And I'm like, well, why are you asking my opinion? I'm just a ring announcer. But then Luke and also say, he's like, you know what, because you watch the entire show, you see every single match, you see everything. So if you're doing something wrong, if they're doing something wrong, I'm like, okay, I guess I can kind of start seeing that now. So it's a little bit easier when people ask me, and I mean, it's just something that kind of humbles me.
Yeah, you got to take it like this though. Like, they're right. You're the guy sitting there watching the whole entire show from start to finish. So you see absolutely everything that happens. So you're almost, and this is no knock, but you're almost in a better position to tell people what they could do better, what they should not do, than anybody else that's in the building, because you're actually sitting there watching it the whole entire time. You're the one that helps tell the story of what's going on in the ring. If there is no ring announcer, if there is no referee, if there is no commentary team, there is no professional wrestling. They're the ones that tell the story. So you're almost, and this is another thing, like I know I'm not too big of a person to be like, oh yeah, Chris, go talk to Chris. Chris watched your whole match. He'll help you out. Whenever I direct people to go, whenever I sent my guys up to Dynamo after we lost out on our first building, I told them to go find someplace else to train in the meantime. No other trainer that you know of would personally tell your guys to go work for another company, another training company. I go, if you can get in someplace, go do it. because they're going to teach you something different than what I'm going to teach you.
Mm-hmm.
Like Eagle Eye, he wants to go down, train at Nightmare Factory, in a year or two. Good, go do it. You're going to gain more knowledge down there with QT Marshall and them guys. Like if any of my guys if they want to go to Dynamo, if they want to go over to Ace Academy, if they want to go to any of these companies, they can go do that, because I'm not in the market of trying to hold my guys down. I'm in the market of trying to make my guys be the absolute best that they can be, not the absolute best that I can be. If that makes sense.
Jaysin, that looks at it. I mean, again, you talk about, and I want to kind of hit on 2 points here. One, you talk about people like referees, like announcers, like security, and people along those lines. Wrestlers provide the physical part of the story. Everybody else provides the soundtrack. They provide all that the extra levels, the extra bells and whistles with things. But one of the things that you said too, and I find it very refreshing, is that when it comes to professional wrestling, you're not going to learn every style in one place. You need to go to a variety of places. And again, I think about a former broadcast colleague of ours, and I know a lot of fans through the Wrestle Talk podcast are going to find this name a blast from the past, one Richard Douglas. He spent a good amount of time at Dynamo Pro, and he made an opportunity to go down to the Rose Wrestling Academy down in Texas. And I could tell immediately from there that he was a completely different wrestler when he returned. He had several different little nuggets in the toolbox, so to speak. So that you know exactly what's there, and you can bring it back and show so much more and expand the wrestling industry.
Right. Jim Harris makes a good point. He goes, as a booker and promoter, it was my job to watch every match, take notes, and think, how can I help them make it better and help them step up their game more and get that crowd into what they're doing. That's exactly true, but that's exactly true for the guys that are on the outside of the curtain, your ring announcers, your commentary guys. They're out there watching the whole entire show, whereas Jim, the promoter and the booker, might not be able to do that at exact every single moment. So Jim, I'm not taking anything away, but as a promoter and the promoter and the booker might not always be there at every single time. But the people that are there at every single moment in time are the guys on the outside the ring announcer, your commentators. Why do you think Michael Cole has had that job forever? Because he knows what the hell's going on. He knows what he's doing. Like that's one of the things, Jerry Morgan's, he's not technically one of my guys, because he trained before, he trained with Espinoza and Broadway way back in the day. And then when he decided to come back into wrestling, he linked up with me, and now he's, I guess you could say, one of my guys, and he's helped me out a lot, because stuff that I can't physically do anymore, he can get in there and help me do the guys, show with the guys. He can actually get in there and work matches with the guys all the time. I can't get in there and physically work matches with the guys all the time. I can do it occasionally here and there, but he's better suited for me to have as a partner to help me out with working with guys than just about anybody, because he can actually get in there and do the stuff that I say. So yeah, that's something that I'm real big on, is like, I want to bring people into what I'm doing that can help me. Like when we had the first building, one of the first people that I contacted was Jimmy Harris and Billy Diamond to come down and hang out. Philly Blunt, guys that brought me into the business. And then they brought John Blackheart, and John Blackheart would come down and hang out with us sometimes. So like I'm in the, like I tell my guys, I'm not in. It's kind of a funny thing that I say. Like, I'm not in the wrestling business. I'm in the knowledge business.
Mm-hmm.
So like if I can bring somebody in and have like special training sessions with guys, whether it be for working on promos, working cameras, being able to shoot a professional wrestling show that actually looks appealing, like to teach guys how to run a camera to make it look appealing for a professional wrestling show because when I got out of wrestling, I started doing photography and videography work and stuff like that. So like I know how to. I wouldn't say that I'm the greatest at it, but I know what looks visually good for a wrestling show. For as a fan and as somebody who's done that stuff in the past. So like I'm really big on trying to teach guys that wrestling is not, and as sad as this might be to say, wrestling's not just about the wrestling. Wrestling's about a little bit more than that. Wrestling's about being able to grab people in, letting people get emotional towards you. What makes me, what makes me as the wrestler so goddamn great that makes 100,000 people want to follow me. And it's not just the wrestling. What a lot of it is being an emotional connection to that person. Having that emotional connection. Being able to listen to somebody talk and being like, this is what got me. This is what hooked me. You see what I'm talking about? Like when you're doing a show like this, being able to emotionally connect to people is a good thing. Like I have a YouTube channel and I streamed for like 3 years straight, and people would, and it was small, and it gradually got a little bit bigger and a little bit bigger and a little bit bigger, and people to this day, they go, Jaysin, why don't you stream anymore? You need to stream more. You need to do this more. You need to do that more. It's because I emotionally connected with the people. That's the thing with wrestling is wrestling's not just about what we do in the ring. It's about how can we emotionally connect to these people that are sitting out here paying our bills. How can we emotionally connect to these people? And that's something that I work with the guys is trying to get them to understand that this business is not just about the cool ass moves that we do, but it's also being able to emotionally connect to the people in the crowd.
And Jaysin, I want to go back here and I want to take just a second here. You talk about how professional wrestlers need to be able to observe and learn and take the knowledge. I did a little bit of research. And back in 2013, you went to a place that Chris and I both had the opportunity to go to. That's Impact Pro Wrestling up in Iowa as a part of the National Pro Wrestling Hall of Fame weekend up in Waterloo, Iowa.
That wasn't me. That was another Jaysin.
One other Jaysin Static?
Yeah. The funny thing is what I didn't know whenever I picked my name is that there was another guy on the indies at the time who was wrestling as Jason Static. And he was from I think he was like from New Jersey maybe, but he was cut up, like he was ripped, he was a bigger guy, big muscle guy. And I was kind of a short midgety guy, so like
short and stocky.
We got confused a lot.
One thing I'm gonna have to jump on I'm going to jump on our media team on this one because the idea that the way they had it spelled and when they were doing their research is the exact same spelling. So we're going to have to make sure that we have a nice little meeting tomorrow from the wonderful media department. But anyway, besides all the great wrestling talk, I do want one thing to talk to you about, and that is your wrestling school. You brought a lot of information about it, but my question to you is this: being a longtime pro wrestler like we've discussed here tonight, what makes your academy stand out as a destination for aspiring pro wrestlers?
What makes see that's a little bit hard for me because it's really depends on what you want with wrestling. Again, like if what I try to do different is I don't just try to teach you about wrestling, the in-ring stuff. I try to teach you about the history of pro wrestling. Where it started, how it started, where it began, why this situation happened here. And I think what a lot of people do, and this is not a knock to any other wrestling school or anything. What I think a lot of people do is they just teach the guys the in-ring stuff. But I don't think enough guys teach like the history of where it is and where it came from. You know, like when our first building that we had, we worked out with boxers and MMA guys. And there was this one time that the MMA guys were kind of like chuckling, you know, about what we were doing in the ring and everything. And I walked up to them and I was like, "Hey," I was like, "Do you guys understand that the history of MMA, the history of your guys' sport, came from professional wrestling? It was professional wrestlers that started MMA." You know, so like, and then they're like, "Oh, I didn't know that." You know, so like, and then actually bringing them MMA guys in and showing them what we do, teaching them the roles and all that stuff, and a couple of other little things that we do. And then they're like, "Oh, this is a lot different than what we expect it would be." You know, so like what I try to do is I try to bring a variety of people in, kind of the same way that I was trained. You know, I try to bring in a variety of people. Like, you know, I would love to get Sadie down there. I would love to get the guys at the Forge down there to work out. I would love to get, you know, and I got a handful. I got a list about a mile long of guys that I want to bring down and do special sessions with. There's guys that I want to bring down who don't do any in-ring wrestling, but who just do commentating, who just do, you know, ring announcing stuff. Because to me, being able to leave everything better than what it was, what it was whenever I left it, the way that I left it, that's my ultimate things. Promos, conditioning, philosophy, character work, strength training, presentation, etc. Jerry Morgan, my guy, you know, helping me out here. You know, so that's the type of stuff that I work on. Like, we do a lot of working out, a lot of hard, heavy working out, a lot of philosophy. I take my school, my gym as part professional wrestling, part philosophy school. Because wrestling to me there's philosophy in wrestling. There's psychology in wrestling. There's philosophical stories and characters and stuff like that. So anything that we can do to help people get better, whether it be on any of those levels, that's what I feel that I can do the best. Because hell, I've carried my Jaysin Static character. I retired from wrestling in 2013. I haven't wrestled a match since 2013. But I've been able to keep my name and my buzz built off of being able to be the character and getting people emotionally connected to me. You know what I mean? So that's one of the things that I try to do different than everybody else. Is I think a lot of people, one of my guys, Reinar, character development. Character is absolutely one of the most important things in professional wrestling. Because if you don't have a character, it's going to be hard for people to grab onto you. You could be just the guy that is a hardcore wrestler that's very damn good, but do people actually follow you instead of just go, "Hey, you're the good wrestler guy"? There's many of those guys in history that we can name out there that we look back and we go, yes, their fucking work rate was amazing, but yeah, that's it. You know? And that's the unfortunate thing. I just wish more people would think more about their character and the development and the presentation of wrestling, because that helps. And that's going to help any indie show, no matter if you're the lowest guy on the card or the top guy on the card. Your character presentation from start to finish, from the minute that you step out of your vehicle to the minute that you get back in your vehicle and back on the road.
Yep.
Presentation is everything. Carry yourself like a professional. Do the business good. Respect the business. Respect the people in it. And that's plain and simple. That's what I try to do. And that's what I literally beat into my guys, is respect and all that.
Wow.
I'm sorry, man. I like to talk.
Hey,
no, you're
I'm
fine.
just saying it's like I said, you've encapsulated a lot of what myself Chris Rodell, and countless others who have paved the way. And again, when you talked earlier about guys like a Philly Blunt, like a John Blackheart, I mean, and John Blackheart many, many years ago taught me inside the squared circle. He's a man who's probably forgotten more about professional wrestling than most wrestlers ever learn. And again, to this day and time, anytime I talk about pro wrestling, John's always up at the top of the list. I know, like I said, I believe, too, thinking back to the Hall of Fame that Jim Harris is going to be putting on this year, the 2024, having the Blackheart Award. And this year, another name you and I are familiar with, Mr. Bibbs, being the recipient of that award. I mean, again, that shows the dedication, that shows the heart, that shows the drive that you have with your school and with your belief in professional wrestling. Now, Chris, I'm going to go ahead here and I'm going to lay it on the line here. I have heard on a very good authority, Jaysin, that you, besides being, as you said earlier, a philosophical person, a knowledgeable professional athlete, I also know you're a little bit of a wrestling historian.
I try to be. I wouldn't say I'm the greatest at it, but like there's way better people than there's way more intelligent people out there than me. I watch a lot of wrestling stuff. I read a lot of wrestling books and stuff like that. You know, so I try to do the best that I can, but I wouldn't say I'm the best at it.
Well, I'll tell you what. One of the things we have here on the Wrestle Talk podcast is what's called the Wrestle Talk Podcast Game Show Challenge. And no, Chris, you can go ahead and throw me back in the middle here.
Sorry.
Because right now, it's going to make it work perfectly because tonight right here, I'm going to level with you, Jaysin. If you're willing to participate, our broadcast colleague here, Chris Rodell, also considers himself to be a knowledgeable individual of the world of professional wrestling. So are you willing to participate in tonight's Wrestle Talk Podcast Game Show Challenge?
Let's try it.
All righty. Well, tell you what, to make this all work out, and Chris, I know that you've got everything taken care of. You've been working hard all night long, and I have to throw this out here because if not, I'm going to get in trouble. This is particularly thrown at one Chris Rodell.
Snitch, you didn't participate in either game show challenge that when you were on the show. You left before both of them. So,
and that is true. We have that on file. If you want to go ahead and go back, we will find that and make sure that the snitch is made aware on that. But let's go ahead and just to make everything work right, let's go ahead and get us in the mindset of the game show challenge. Let's go ahead and get us some game show challenge music. All right, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to this week's installment of the Wrestle Talk Podcast Game Show Challenge. Tonight's contest is scheduled for the best 2 out of 3 falls. Our competitors are the Wrestle Talk Podcast own Big Sexy Chris Rodell and Jaysin Static. In a few moments, gentlemen, tonight I'm going to give you information about 3 particular wrestlers in a particular wrestling category. When you think you know the answer, you shout out your answer. First one to win 2 out of 3 falls will win tonight's game show challenge. Tonight, in honor of the legacy of one Jaysin Static, tonight's Wrestle Talk Podcast Game Show Challenge category is going to be the Cruiserweight Classic.
Okay.
All the wrestlers that I'm going to give you information on are going to be individuals that competed in the WWE Cruiserweight Classic. Once again, when you think you know the answer, shout it out. First one to get 2 out of 3 questions correct will win tonight's challenge. Jaysin, being the challenger here this evening, are you ready?
I guess I am. You know, I'm gonna start off by saying this. I've been hitting my head a lot, okay? So I forget names. Ask any of my guys that are in the chat. I forget names, okay? So I'm going to give them my best damn shot.
All righty. Chris, are you ready?
Yeah. I mean, he's not wrong. I forget names too, and I don't think I've ever been hit in the head.
Yeah, we've all been in the wrestling business far too long. We've had a few moments with the brain cells having some issues, so we're going to go ahead and get things going. All righty, gentlemen, here we go. Our first fall of the evening. This gentleman competed in the Cruiserweight Classic. He moved on to countless different roles within the WWE, including being a former 24/7 champion. Currently, you can see him as a part of the Alpha Academy. Name it.
Tozawa.
That is correct. Chris Rodell with the first fall. It was Akira Tozawa. Like I said, we're one fall to none, Chris. Chris, are you ready for fall number 2?
Yep.
Jaysin?
Yes.
All righty. Number 2. This individual was in the Cruiserweight Classic. He has moved on to set the world of New Japan Pro Wrestling on fire. Most notably, teaming with Kenny Omega. Name him.
Zack Sabre Jr.
No, not Zack Sabre Jr.
He did. Was he? No.
Oh, what's his name?
To add a little more to it, his tag team was the Golden Lovers.
Bushi? Kota Ibushi?
Kota Ibushi is correct.
I couldn't think of his name. I wanted to say Okada, but I knew that wasn't right.
Wasn't Sabre in the
Sabre
was in the tournament as well.
Yeah.
Now, gentlemen,
he did team with Omega.
Correct.
At one
But
point
in the case of what was there,
right.
The primary tag team partner was Kota Ibushi. Now, gentlemen, it's one fall apiece. Just like any great wrestling matchup, it's all now time for the third and deciding fall. Jaysin, are you ready?
Yep.
Chris, are you ready?
Yep, I'm getting my brain turned on.
All right, here we go, gentlemen. The third and deciding fall. These individuals both competed in the Cruiserweight Classic. They moved on to NXT and the WWE, both as opponents, and currently the tag team on Raw, known as DIY. Name them both.
Ciampa and Gargano.
Ciampa and Gargano is correct. Ladies and gentlemen, tonight's winner of the Wrestle Talk Podcast Game Show Challenge is Big Sexy Chris Rodell.
You want to hear another little tidbit about Tozawa? Tozawa was a local guy.
That is true.
Mm-hmm.
It's true. He did compete. As a matter of fact, he competed in St. Louis Anarchy, I do believe. Very good point.
Ciampa's been through St. Louis too a couple times. Yep. I mean,
through WLW.
Yeah.
So, well, like I said, I'm going to say right now, first of all, Jaysin. Oh, okay, we got to go back here.
Reinar, you're going to get.
We're just going to leave that one there. I know this may not bode well.
Respectful shit. Make him do like 50 bumps or make him run the ropes for like 30 minutes straight.
500 hack squats.
I remember those back in the day. I remember those. Well, ladies and gentlemen, before we let you go, Jaysin, I want to go ahead and give you just a minute here. For those that want to know more about your school and everything that goes on, let's go ahead and share with the viewers of the Wrestle Talk podcast, not only more about the Academy, but let's go ahead and if there's anywhere they can catch you on social media or website or anything like that, to make it a point, the Fight Club Academy, so they can know where to get this great wrestling training that's available to them.
Best place that you can find me is here on my Facebook, Jaysin Static. I got a Facebook fan page. You can catch me on there. Fight Club. We have our own Facebook page on there. Fight Club Wrestling Academy on Facebook. We'll be the only ones there. Make sure you spell Jaysin with a Jaysin, not JSON, like these guys here on this podcast did. But yeah, that's where you can find us. A lot more info coming out soon. We're getting ready to actually. I'm getting ready to go sign the paperwork today not today, but this week for the building. So we're hopefully, what I'm shooting for is maybe a March open sometime. Maybe I'm not real sure how that's going to work out yet, but that's what I'm shooting for.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, you heard right here from Jaysin Static, the man behind the Fight Club Wrestling Academy. Jaysin, I got to tell you, having been in many different locker rooms with you, it's always an honor and a privilege to have you here. And again, we're going to throw one more comment out here before we go. Again, very nice recommendation. FCWA is coming. Maybe the opportunity of taking care of some things here. Jaysin, I want to say officially welcome to the Wrestle Talk podcast family.
And the one thing he didn't mention was his 138, his pop culture collection and wrestling collection. I think you can find it on eBay, right?
Yeah, eBay. I got my own eBay store. I also got a website, weare138co.com, where you can buy shirts like this. You can buy all my merchandise, all my Jaysin Static t-shirts, all the Fight Club Wrestling Academy t-shirts. I want to give a big shout out to all my guys. They're all rocking and rolling here in the chat. Eagle Eye, Rixer, Reinhardt, Jerry Morgan, Triple T, all you guys. Much love, much respect to all you guys. Thank you guys for doing what I'm, helping me do what I do so I can help you guys do what you want to do. So, and I want to thank you guys for, hopping on here and coming down. And you guys are more than welcome to come down and maybe shoot a live podcast from the home of FCWA when we get that podcast studio set up in the future.
Nice.
And you know what, Jaysin? I'm going to tell you right now, we've had an opportunity. We've been to KCXW. Maybe we need to make that journey down there. We've had our events live in Kansas City. Why not have them live here in St. Louis through FCWA?
I appreciate it, man.
All right, Jaysin. All right. Thanks for coming in. I hope to see you down the road.
I definitely will. I'll be around.
All right. Talk to you soon.
Yep.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, Jaysin Static of Fight Club Wrestling Academy right here on the Wrestle Talk podcast. I got to tell you, Chris, I was looking forward to this interview. Tonight was a great night here on the Wrestle Talk podcast. And I think, honestly, Jaysin Static was the cherry on top of a great night of professional wrestling talk.
It was a good night. We had the return of Big Daddy P to the Wrestle Talk podcast. We talked some good wrestling earlier, and it's good. It's just I think we need to leave it on a positive site.
I agree with you. Before we do, we got to make sure one more time we talk about all those great sponsors. We can go ahead and bring them up here right now on the screen. Wrestle Talk Podcast. I'd like to thank all of our great sponsors. Royal Mills Transportation. If you need transportation in the Kansas City area, check with our guy, DeJuan Mills, the CEO. He'll get you around town. Nobleman's Barber Lounge, Kansas City. Kincaid Arcade at the Oak Park Mall. Our great friends over at Interstate 70 Sports Media. Little Popeye Designs. You want to go to those great Wrestle Talk podcast tumblers. They are available. And, of course, the FWWC, the world's premier fantasy wrestling group. You can catch them every Thursday night on all of our great media outlets. Chris, I got to tell you, from top to bottom, a great night of professional wrestling talk. And for those of you that have been watching the show, just as a reminder here, and again, we're going to bring one last thing before we put on a reminder. As you're well aware, the 2024 St. Louis Independent Wrestling Hall of Fame will be announced soon. We're hoping that Jim Harris, again, longtime supporter of the Wrestle Talk podcast, will be able to announce that here in the weeks to come. Also, as a reminder, for those of you that have enjoyed the Wrestle Talk podcast, just a few days ago, we had Pinky Shortcake and Psycho on the Wrestle Talk podcast. As a matter of fact, tonight, it's going on right now as we speak, Big Little Brawlers having their season finale on Discovery. You can check out all the great wrestlers. You can check out Pinky Shortcake. You can check out Psycho. You can check out Jay Amazing, Andrew the Giant, our good friend Ivar the Micro. And, of course, they're going to be talking about that big cage match between Little Show and Hot Rod, making it a point talking about Microfest being available. And it's actually being broadcast right now on Discovery. You can also get it on Max as well. I believe it's HBO Max Plus. You can get that taken care of. Chris, from top to bottom, a great show.
All right,
Luke, here.
Luke, bring it on home. I'll see you guys all next week.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, on behalf of the great people here behind the Wrestle Talk podcast, I want to thank each and every one of you for tuning in this week. Make it a point to check us out on all social media, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, YouTube. Check it out, Wrestle Talk podcast. We look forward to seeing you right back here next Tuesday evening, 8 p.m. Eastern, 7 p.m. Central, for the best in professional wrestling talk, news, interviews, and so much more. The Wrestle Talk podcast. Take care, and we'll see you next week